Hello, hello. I just had a great therapy appointment and I am fired up. I have a lot to talk about because I had a really interesting experience where I remembered exactly what my life worldview, emotional frameworks were when I was in high school, when I was like insecure like crazy and trying to figure everything out and having zero emotional tools. And I realized how far I've come. And so I wanted to talk about that here. The before and after. The before is where I was for a very long time and where I suspect a lot of people currently are through no fault of their own, which is having a 100% externalized self-worth. So, what I'll say is when I was in high school, I went from having a really supportive community in school in my kindergarten through 8th grade, where I was just thriving. I was the man, I had all this status, but also was really feeling safe to be my full self. And I went to high school and it was the opposite experience where the community was not very welcoming, not very encouraging of who I was, and it immediately felt unsafe to be myself. So my status was completely changed, right? It was at the bottom. It went from upper level to lower level. And so I had grown up in the way that many people do with an 100% external self-worth metric, right? Meaning I feel good when everyone else treats me like I'm important and valuable. And I feel really terrible when other people don't treat me that way. Okay? Maybe you recognize this in yourself. So, I really struggled for several years. 2 years I was at that school. I just didn't have status in that place for whatever reason. Okay? So, in my mind, I started doubting. I'm remembering having this experience of doubting my self-worth. And what I did at the time was I decided to approach it like a scientist. I remember that's how I thought about it. And I was like, okay, my self-worth must be a true number, basically. Think out of 100, my worth is some number, and I don't know what that number is. When I was back in K through 8, I thought it was 100. I thought it was 99. I was maxing out of how worthy I am, right? And now in this school, it feels like it's 20 out of 100. And so I'm like, there must be a real number that is my worth as a person. And it's got to be, somewhere between 100 and 20. And I want to figure that out. I want to understand what my worth is. And I thought about it that way, like a number. And what I did was I set out to, like I said, approach it like a scientist, meaning gather information. So I would recognize and pay attention to how are other people treating me? How are other people responding to me? Are there other people in my community that are getting treated better? And are there other people who are getting treated worse? Okay? And that created in my mind this hierarchy where it's I'm not at the top, I'm not at the bottom, I'm somewhere, let's say 2/3 of people are getting treated better than me, 1/3 of people are getting treated worse than me. And so that must be my worth. And I started believing that. I started being oh, well, I guess the truth is that my worth is, 33 out of 100 or whatever the fuck. And so I started behaving as if that was true. I started making meaning out of it. And when people treated me poorly, in my mind, I was oh, well, that's what I deserve. That that aligns with what I understand about myself, right? Which is, in this place, when people treat me bad, that makes sense because I just don't have the worth, right? So this is fascinating because this is a 180-degree difference from how I feel today, and I have traversed this pattern, completely changed this pattern. I know that's not what traverse means. I've traversed the journey to get to the point where I have alchemized the pattern. You like that? You like that? Before and after. Where I am today, I do not make any meaning out of how other people treat me. My current framework is that how other people treat me is fully a function of them. It is a projection of them, how they're feeling, what they want to express, the hardships that they've gone through, the lessons that they've learned, how they think it's okay to treat others, right? I have completely gone the opposite direction. So how someone treated me used to feel like a representation of the truth about me. And now how someone treats me is, in my mind, 100% a representation of the truth about someone else. So where do I get my self-worth from, right? My self-worth now comes from a belief that I am 100% worthy of being treated with kindness, respect, being valued, being important, all of those things. I am 100 no matter what, and I will not doubt that. And I will treat myself that way. Because remember I said when I believed that I was 30 out of 100, 33 out of 100 worth, I started accepting that and I started behaving in alignment with that. Now it's, how am I going to treat myself? And I decided I'm going to treat myself like I am extremely important, which I am to me, extremely valuable, which I am to me, extremely lovable, which I am to me, right? Extremely worthy of being treated well, which I am to me, right? Like, it's a choice is the point I'm getting, is the point I'm making. You choose to treat yourself at a certain level. Then you learn to depersonalize how other people treat you. Okay? So every time someone treats you poorly and you have a voice that comes up and says, hey, actually, you're not as valuable as you think because it's like, no, I am. They just made a decision to treat me a certain way, and that has nothing to do with the truth of how worthy I am. Okay, that's a lot. Hopefully you're not listening on 1.5x because you probably, it's maybe a little bit too quick for you. Can't handle it. So what I want to draw attention to here is that the number that I was perceiving externally, trying to understand what is that number, right? That wasn't self-worth, that was status. So status, social status, is the metric of how are you treated by other people? How much value do you hold to other people? How important are you to other people? How much respect do you deserve from other people? It is inherently hierarchical. It is inherently a zero-sum game. If I have low status, that is helping someone else get higher status, okay? That's how humans exist. That's how we've existed for a long time. The pecking order, especially in like two males kind of going at it. You see it in nature documentaries, right? Where it's like, which male is gonna win? They're gonna fight. That's status, okay? And the mistake I made was equating status and worth. What I now understand today, quick, small idea that changed my entire life, is that my status does not equal my worth. So I don't have 100% top of the top status in every room that I walk in. That's just a fact. Like, in the hierarchical game, when I'm walking down the street, I'm not A-list celebrity, turning heads, people asking for autographs, right? That would be 100% status. Driving a fucking, Lamborghini. Like, we all understand, we all have an idea of what that is. If you equate your worth with your status, you will constantly be chasing status. And you'll be going, because we want high self-worth, and therefore we have to get high status, and that means we have to dominate others. We have to subjugate. We need to make sure everyone else is lower status than us, because again, it's a zero-sum game, right? That sucks so much. And it's so harmful for yourself, for your soul, for society in general. And it's, I think, a big reason why we're in the situation we're in societally and spiritually, right? No one's happy with what's going on, right? So what can we do differently? On an individual level, we can learn to separate our worth from our status. So even if you walk into a room and you're the lowest status person there, can you still treat yourself like you are important, lovable, valuable, worthy of respect, right? Can you treat yourself like you matter? And again, that's a choice. Can you do that? So that's been the biggest thing for me, and I'll let you know why that's been so helpful. Now, when I'm interacting with others, when I'm out in the world, and I'm working on this, I'm not perfect, but I can move through the world in a way that my worth is not up for debate, right? No matter what happens, I know that I will treat myself with respect and that I will perceive myself to be valuable and important and worthy of love, regardless. If someone shames me, if someone humiliates me, if someone, is violent against me, right? Those are things that hurt status. Those are relational things that hurt status. To be humiliated is to rapidly lose lots of status, if you could think of it that way, right? And I don't care if that happens. I have also spent a lot of time creating relationships with the sensations, the emotions of being humiliated, being shamed, feeling guilt, feeling, in addition to all those things, grief, sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety, right? All of those experiences that we spend so much time trying to avoid. Your self-worth is not your status. And a huge, huge, huge thing that helps us kind of see this is when we learn to set boundaries. When we learn to set boundaries, that is when you can start to say, I'm being treated like someone who has less than 100 worth right now. And I don't like that, so I'm going to leave. That's what that means. That's what setting a boundary is. And where do I want to go with this? That's something I've been working on. So when I perceive like, oh, I'm not being treated with respect. I'm not being treated like I'm valuable, like I'm important right now by this other person. It is in my control whether I stay in that interaction, which is what I talked about in my last video. Your life is what you tolerate, right? So if you're in an interaction where you are feeling like you're not being respected, valued, appreciated, you feel important, you're feeling loved, whatever. It is a choice. Are you going to stay in it because you think that's what you deserve, which is what most people do, and that's okay, but you have an alternative. Your alternative is, I'm going to leave because this is not how I want to be treated. This is not how I want to treat myself. And so I'm going to leave. That is what it looks like to have high self-worth when you have less than perfect status. Boundaries. And I understand that now. And I didn't really understand that before. So if you are someone who is worrying about what others think of you, you have this externalized self-worth, that's okay. But I want you to know that there is an alternative. And it feels really, really, really good. It feels like you're coming home to yourself. Like you are going to treat yourself with kindness and respect and love no matter what. And boundaries are a huge piece of that. Huge, huge, huge piece of that. And that's what I'm learning. But it's really interesting to see how far I've come and reflect on it. And I hope that this has been helpful. So I'll see you in the next one.